This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what have we got exciting that's coming up in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this week's exciting episode, we bring you the first part of a wide-ranging conversation that I had recently with Thomas Jørgensen from hidDenmark.
I really like the old credits.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, John Downs, Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and Archie, the most famous little dog in the world, and welcome to another episode of the Archie the Dog Show, subtitled Archie the Best Dog in the World. But before we start, we seem to have a visitor in the studio. Two visitors in the studio we happen to have. All the way from the Isle of Man, we have a talking mongoose, and we have the comedic legend, which is Barry Tadcaster.
Well, it's a special event today, isn't it, on the show? Barry, you couldn't be more correct. We've got Scott Musgrove, the creator of Fat Dog Mendoza, live in the studio, and he's going to be kicking the face off an ant.
Never mind, ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that no ants were harmed during the making of that or any other part of this episode. My name's John Downs, I'm the Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and now it's properly time to welcome you to another episode of On the Track. And for those of you who don't know, On the Track is a show on YouTube here that I put out every Wednesday evening at 6:30 and every Saturday afternoon at 3. And the Saturday episodes for about half an hour and the Wednesday episodes for about half that. But to be quite honest, these times are completely approximate and don't really have any sense at all about them. Now, the show is a mixture, a melange, a moderation, a medley. Hey, Graham, what begins with M?
Moped.
Of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, I hear you ask? Well, I'm not really sure how to explain it. I think you should probably ask him.
Surreality is part of an art movement which arrived on the scene soon after the First World War, and it's when one juxtaposes images of the absurd or strange upon what is laughably known as real life to make something hyperreal or surreal.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the other afternoon I had a very pleasant time because I had a visit from Thomas Jørgensen, who you will remember, I'm sure, when he and Simon appeared on the show from their group hidDenmark. He is on a holiday in the West Country, and he was visiting all sorts of places of Fortean significance. And I'm honoured that he thought that to pay a visit to me and catch the bus from Bude, where he was staying, all the way up to Wolseley to spend an afternoon and have a couple of cups of tea with me was Forteanly significant. This is what happened. Welcome to England, old friend. It's lovely to see you in the flesh at last. So, where have you been so far in your travels around England?
Well, I came via London. I came by plane, and I took a bus almost a week ago to Exeter. Because I thought it was a nice starting point. And then I could go down and visit this area, Maidencombe, where this notorious tracks have been found.
What did you think when you were there?
Nice area, very nice. I thought it was almost like a jungle. I don't know if it's something they did artificially with the woods, or if it's the local vegetation, or it was just really green and very... I mean, some things definitely would put like an adventure trail or something. But it's... it was a nice hike up. I'm not sure I got the exact area, but I did get it from... what's his name? Siggy. But you know, GPS can be off by a little bit. But it was just like a trail, and without that much information, I'm not sure actually what to think about it.
You didn't see Bigfoot?
I didn't see it, but it's... I'm not gonna... There can be some weird experiences around there, but I'm usually not the kind of person who picks up on that kind of thing anyway. So I wasn't expecting it, but it was interesting to visit the area. So
then where did you go?
From there I went to Dartmoor. It was simply when I was planning the trip at home, I was reading about legends, and I found out so many of the legends were around Dartmoor, and I hadn't been there before, and it's like, okay, let's make like a day hike out of it, or maybe two. And then I planned to stay at the area that was closest to the most things that I read about, which I found interesting. I stayed in Princetown, and that was very close to the Wistman's Wood. A very nice place, bigger than I thought actually. I mean, it isn't a big wooded area at all, but it's bigger than you think when you look on the map. And then the Hairy Hands area up towards Postbridge. I don't know what I expected to see there, but maybe just go there and see if there's some kind of a vibration or some kind of a feeling. I got there, but via detour. I was supposed to go through a public footpath, but I wish I got pixie-led. It was just normal. I think just not reading the map properly, or the trail had ended. But people had been going through from the other side, so I went around, and I went to this stretch of road, which the nature changes there around that place to become more wooded. So I don't know if there's some connection with that.
And there was a dead cow right in the middle of the path.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because it's not I don't get that kind of sensation. It's something you read about in these legends, Dartmoor legends. And I talked even with a lady on the bus about some areas where she went, where she gets the feeling that some specific areas where she gets the feeling that there is somebody watching. And I had a little bit of that just before I found that this dead cow. It was just lying in the beginning of a footpath going down to the Cherry Brook area. If you look on a map, it's down there where the Hairy Hands legends, stories have happened. And I don't know. I'm not an expert on what could have happened, but there was nothing visibly on it that showed it had been killed. It just, I saw the back of it, and then I came to the front, and I saw the eyes were already picked out. So, but it hadn't been there for long. It could have broken his neck, like I think you suggested it, from the stone wall. But yeah, that's really unlucky, I think, for it.
Well, that part of Cherrybrook Valley is where those 15 ponies were found dead in 1977. So there's a long history of strange animal killings there.
This is interesting. This I didn't know that before you mentioned it. But that's also, most of the books I read were before 1980, I think. So yeah. But this maybe for next time to try to find a path through that area also. But it was a good trip. I definitely next time I'd make a longer trip on Dartmoor to go like on some stretches, because looking at pictures and from driving back, from driving further on the journey, I could see how many interesting things there were just without legends connected, but just like to see and so that's for next time.
I love Dartmoor. I've been going there since 1969. My father was a Dartmoor man, and I love the place.
Yeah.
You can't do it justice in a couple of you couldn't do it justice in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no.
So much to see.
Yeah, it's so big. Yeah, it's.
But next time you decide to do Dartmoor, let me know, and I'll give you a list of places you should see.
Definitely.
Because there's part of northern Dartmoor by Oakhampton, which is so strange and so wild. If I took a photograph of it and told you it was on Iceland, you'd agree with me. You'd say, yeah, that's what Iceland looks like. It really does look completely alien to everything you believe in Britain. But while on the subject of the hairy hands, there are Danish hairy hand stories, aren't there?
Yeah, this is something I when I first read about the hairy, I hadn't heard about it before I read it in the Theo Brown's book, which I borrowed a few months ago for planning the trip, and it struck me there was something about it that sounded familiar, and then just I don't know. A few weeks or something ago, I was like, oh, okay, there is actually a Danish parallel to this. It's not on the road, it's not about hands grabbing motorists and throwing them off the road, but there's a poltergeist case from Copenhagen, which I think was more or less lost for a long, long time. I haven't been able to find anything about it in any of like spiritualists' journals, or I found it in a newspaper article some years ago, and it's the home. The childhood home of J.K. Willemsen, a famous Danish artist. And the story was that somebody living there, there was poltergeist activity in general. There was actually also something about strange green light, and it reminded me a bit of the Entity case from the US. But there was a particular point in the pretty long article where there was talk about this disembodied hand that came from like a cold, hairy hand that came out of nowhere and touched the person living there. So that was quite similar to these hairy hands accounts, because it's not a really a common thing, not in what I've read in English or Danish literature at least. So that's kind of interesting. I should try to maybe find out more about it.
I've come to realise over the years, particularly through knowing Lars Thomas, that it is almost like England and Denmark are twin countries. There's so much we have in common, especially in the folklore.
Yeah, it's true. Really, I think when we did the show some months back, you, me and Simon, we were talking about some Danish legends, and I could actually see now when reading up on Devon, Cornwall folklore, that how much more there is in common than I first thought. It's some of it is almost the same, and then of course there are local mixed with local stories here that is different. But there is very many of the same traditions. Yeah.
Well, of course, everybody knows about the time that Britain and Denmark were under when Britain was under the Danelaw, ruled by the Danes, and of course for quite a long time the British and the Danish had the same king.
Yeah.
Most notably is King Canute, but it's been a much longer relationship between the two countries than that, because long before Danes invaded England, we were trading together. And so I would love to know if the stories we have in common started off as Danish stories or started off as English stories or something completely different.
Yeah, yeah.
So, where did you go from Dartmoor?
Yeah, then I went up via public transport. I'm taking public transport everywhere. I have to say it's maybe not, it doesn't go until midnight or anything, but using Google Maps with the public transport here, it's perfect. It's like to the smallest detail, you can actually plan your trip here and just hope it is one bus isn't late and you miss the next. But it's been a nice way to travel. And so I took a few different buses up to Bude, and I arrived yesterday. It's a town I've been before many years ago, and actually the only place on my trip where I didn't go for a Fortean connection or story. It's just simply because I loved the place last time I was there. But after having planned that, I realized that that you were here pretty close, at least. So this is 30 kilometers from Bude, right? Or
17 miles.
17 miles, yeah. So that's around 30.
Sorry, I still don't think in kilometers.
I more or less can calculate. But it's So I was like, okay, let's take a trip by here. It could be nice to meet you in person and see the whole place. And so that's kind of like I cut a day off the Bude day to go here, and it's also a nice area around on the way with the bus here. And,
well, I've just thought of another place that you should really go to see when you're around here, if not now, next time. But at Morwenstow, which is the town next east from Bude.
Yeah.
It's nearer here than Bude. It's a large village, small town, and it's where the GCHQ missile early warning station is.
Yeah.
And where I nearly got arrested for making a film. But that's another story.
Yeah.
But back in the 19th century, they had a vicar who was a practical joker. A practical joker.
A joker, right.
And he dressed up as a mermaid and sat out on some rocks just out to sea.
Oh, that's great.
And for years everybody believed that they had their very own mermaid in that village.
That's amazing.
So that's a place that's worth going just because of that remarkable story.
That's great. Is that still in Cornwall or Devon? Or?
It's in Cornwall, but only just.
Only just, yeah. Yeah, because this area is very interesting. It's just the border is kind of cut in a very thin way up and towards the north here.
Well, we're only 2.5 miles from the Cornish border.
Yeah.
But I've lived here on and off for the last 53 years, so. But I always recommend this part of the world to people because there are so many legends and so many stories.
Yeah.
And so many things that people still see today.
Yeah.
And the next town along that way has got loads of black dog stories. So.
Oh, close to here. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing I thought about. I've been in the UK now many times, mostly Wales and more in the north, and of course London area. Not so much out here. I never so far as I'm going to go on this trip in a few days. But when you see the churches and when you see much of the building structure around here, it has like that old kind of feeling to it. That Gothic. The churches here are much more like Gothic and more like legendary looking than if you go to Denmark, for example, where legends have died down a lot more. Churches are I have to say, they're more boring. It's just like white or red, or there are a few that are a bit different and stand out, but I think they don't invite so much to like creepy stories as when you go around here. It has much more atmosphere in England and Wales, and so I think maybe that's part of it. While it's that keeps it alive somehow. I'm not sure. Denmark it is different.
That makes perfect sense. And did you, when you were on Dartmoor, did you go to Whittingham?
No. I drove through maybe. I'm not sure now.
Because that's got this enormous church.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a cathedral.
Okay, yeah. I really like these Gothic, pointy. Yeah. About the point about the visiting or the link between Denmark and the UK, I think, the main reason that people don't come to, let's say, Cornwall, Devon, coast area, it's just because people want, when they have a vacation, they want to be able to predict the weather better. So they go to a place where Danish people don't necessarily want it super, super hot, but they go to a place where they can be sure that at least sun for the whole vacation or most of it. And here it's like a gamble a little bit. Well, more than a gamble, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in this village and the area around it, because we're a triangle that sticks out into the Irish Sea.
Ah.
So we get all the gales from Ireland, and it rains more here than it does anywhere else in the region.
This is what I also heard, yeah, and I don't know if Exmoor and Dartmoor, if they play a part so far away, but in a big area around Dartmoor, you could see those like misty clouds coming in, and I actually got a sunburn from a day where the sun wasn't out, but people told me, well, one told me it's windburn, another told me that actually it's not clouds, it's mist, so the sun still goes through or something. But I usually don't get sunburned, and suddenly I was like, what? And, yeah, strange.
So, what are you going to do next?
Well, next is I'm going to have one day tomorrow in Bute, and then I'm going to go to Falmouth, and then I'm going to Mornan Smith, which, everybody knows what it's notorious for. I just really wanted to visit the area. I read up on your book, on all the classics, Janet and Colin Board's Alien Animals and Mystery Animals of Ireland and Britain, and also Tony Shields' book, Monstrum. So it kind of got me. That was like one of the main points to visit. And see what happens.
Well, sadly, with one exception, all of the sightings that I know of the Owl Man have always been by young women. So I'm afraid you're unlikely.
Yeah.
Not unless, maybe if you cross-dress and get yourself a pretty blonde wig.
Could augment it a bit, yeah.
Yes, maybe that will fool it into making an appearance.
But I remember you making that point, and the only guy, there was one guy, and there was this guy, Gavin, or what was his name?
Yeah. And even he only saw it because he had a girlfriend of the right age with him at the time.
Yeah. Well, what is, Did your thoughts about it change during the years, or?
Not really.
Okay.
I've pulled back from my research into Owlman, partially because I've done most of it now. I've spoken to all the witnesses that I know who are still alive. occasionally, and every few years, I get another eyewitness sighting comes in. The last one was about 7 years ago. But as I've said on a number of occasions on this show, the closer you get to this stuff, the more harmful it is.
Yeah.
And so, although I still do investigate weird shit, most of what I do is zoology rather than Fortean.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, it's yeah. I would be the same if I had gotten that far out in in the melodies or yeah.
I'm almost tempted to go back now because my wife's died, Maxine's died, and I've got nobody else in my life really. And I've already had 3 operations in the last 2 years, so I don't really care what happens now. So
Yeah.
I'm very tempted to go back and do some more
Yeah.
weird shit studies. But you're just going to have to watch the space, because I don't know yet.
No. Sure. Yeah, but I'm curious about visiting, of course, but yeah. Also, there is the whole Morgård, but there's been no sightings, I think, really for a long time of that either. Or
There've been several sightings of what people claim was Morgård, but at least 2 of them, recent ones, we've disproved as it being something else. One was a sunfish.
Okay.
And you know, sunfish are these weird fish that swim on their sides and their fins will stick up out of the water.
Yeah.
And another one was a great northern diver.
What is that? Diver?
A bird, it's what the Americans call a loon.
A loon, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But there have been reports.
Yeah.
But I'm not as convinced by them as I once was. But one thing that I think is very important for British cryptozoology, and quite probably for Danish as well, in Britain it was once said that there's only been half a dozen ever reports of walruses coming to British waters. Well, there were 4 different walruses last year.
Okay.
Walruses, especially with the warming, with the global warming, are coming further south quite regularly.
Yeah.
And Richard Freeman has suggested that if you think that walruses could have come into Loch Morar, that explains a lot of the Loch Morar sightings.
Okay.
And I think if you've got something which everybody says is too big to be a seal, that is swimming along in the Cornish waters, it's not Morgård, it's a walrus.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, so I mean, also when I was reading back on the classics and looking at the photos of sea serpents and all the pictures that have now been, I don't know if they've all been dismissed, but the most famous of them, I don't think many people believe in any of those anymore.
Well, the Mary F photos.
Yeah, for example. Yeah.
Well, no, even Doc Shields says that they're a fake.
Yeah, but not who faked them, or.
Well, the interesting thing is he still swears blind that Mary F, the person, exists or existed. I last spoke to him about this about 15 years ago, so I don't know if she's still alive. He also says that he's sure it was a fake.
Yeah.
And he said that at the time, in 76, 77, there were a bunch of artists who used to meet every few weeks in one of the pubs in Falmouth. And they spent a lot of time trying to hoax each other. And there's a famous story, I've never seen the picture, but Doc said that once he hoaxed a picture of UFOs, flying behind some telegraph wires.
Yeah.
And he did it to make that the UFOs, were, if they'd been musical notes, were playing the da 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 from Close Encounters, and that was a hoax that he did on somebody else. And he reckons that it was one of these people who hoaxed the Mary F photos and did it as a joke on him, but he doesn't know which one. I'm pretty sure I do. I think it was a guy called John Gordon. He's dead now.
Yeah.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says, don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
They might be thinking about visiting the South. Well, there's things you need to know. The South might seem quaint, but remember, in the South, they drink shandy. They keep cats. They vote Tory. They go to focus groups. They go to wine bars. They're as soft as shite. So if you visit the South, remember, think once, think twice, think soft as shite.
That was a public information film.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. That's about it for this episode. For those of you who've been following the saga of my operation on my left hand, look, it's pretty well healed up now. The scar is still a bit pink, but it's healed up nicely. Scabs have dropped off, and it does feel considerably better than this hand. But I've been told it'll take another 3 months before it finally gets back to where it's meant to be. Which, considering it hasn't been where it's meant to be for about 5-6 years, that's a jolly good thing. I want to say thank you to the following people for appearing. First of all, Thomas Jørgensen. Thank you, mate. I've really enjoyed your visit, and I've got a little bit more, another sort of 20 minutes or so, which will appear in a future episode, either of this show or of On Track Extra. Haven't decided where yet, but it will be coming out. And thank you to Graham for his masterful rendition of the word moped, which is a word that has always made me laugh all the way through my life. And I want to say a big thanks to Richard Freeman for his masterful bits of nonsense. I'm going to be back next week, but what am I going to be talking about? I don't know. I have no idea. You're going to have to wait and see. But I will be here next Saturday doing something. I want to say a big thank you. I forgot to say when I was thanking Graham for going moped. But I want to say a big thank you for all he does for me. He's the Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology and also my carer, which means without him I would probably be dead. He's the guy who makes sure I take the right medicine at the right time, which is something I'm very, very, very prone to screw up. And he's the guy who gets me out of bed in the mornings, pushes my wheelchair and puts me back to bed at night. Without him, I don't know what I'd do. And I want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis, who's still gallivanting around the colonies. At the moment, I believe that he's trying to get in touch with his inner cowboy and he's grown big side whiskers, and he's wearing a large hat. And I want to say a big thank you to the lovely Gwyn Palmer, but for whom I really wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff. So thank you, all of you. Now, Mr. McQuillan, are you going to be watching the show on Saturday, next Saturday? Because although I've already admitted that I haven't a clue what's going to be in it, there's going to be something in it. And so you're going to have to watch it, Mr. McQuillan, to find out what it is. And as I will be doing the notifications, the live chat and all the other stuff I do every Saturday afternoon, if you're watching it, Mr. McQuillan, I'll be seeing you.